I am making a 60 card branded Despia Bestial deck profile. I'm mainly making this because of how Branded got a new card that I actually really like, being the Alba System Dogmatic Calamity. And I figure that the 60 card version is probably the best way to use it. But the other thing I like about this is that the deck is just has so much searching or it has so much consistency that it doesn't really matter that it's a 60 card deck. Anyway, starting off with the monsters, I play 3 copies of Despian Tragedy. Tragedy has the effect that if it's sent to the graveyard or banished by card effect, then you can add to your hand a Despia monster except for another copy of Tragedy. And then Tragedy's second effect is you can banish it from your graveyard to be able to set a branded spell or trap from your graveyard. But you can only use one of those 2 effects of Tragedy once per turn. Next, I play 3 copies of Tri-Brigade Mercarrier. Mercarrier is a monster negate while it's in your hand as long as you control a fusion monster that mentions Fallen of Elbaz. And then if Mercarrier is banished, then you can add to your hand, I believe it's, or is also, or special, okay, no, you just add to your hand a Fallen of Elbaz or a monster that mentions it outside of Tri-Brigade Mercarrier. Speaking of, I only play 2 monsters in the deck that mentioned Fallen of Elbaz, those being 1 copy Guiding Quem, the Virtuous, and 1 copy of Blazing Cartesia, the Virtuous. Both of these monsters have effects that work with Fallen of Elbaz. Guiding Quem, when summoned, will let you send Fallen of Elbaz from your deck to the graveyard. And if a monster leaves the extra deck, you can activate Quem's effect to be able to summon a Fallen of Elbaz from the graveyard. And then Guiding Quem is also always treated as a Dogmatica and a Despia monster. And then Blazing Cartesia can be special summoned from your hand if you have Fallen of Elbaz on your field or in your graveyard. And then Blazing Cartesia also has the quick effect. I think it's a main phase specific, but I could be wrong. Okay, it has the main phase quick effect to be able to fusion summon. And then the last effect is during the end phase of this card's in the graveyard and a fusion monster was sent to the graveyard that turn, then you can return it to your hand. And next, I play 3 copies of Alibur the Jester Despia. Alibur has the effect that when summoned, you can add a branded spell trap from your deck to your hand. And then, just like Tragedy, this has 2 effects, and you can only use one of the 2 per turn. But its other effect being, if a fusion monster you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, while this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, summon this card, and if you do, negate that targeted monster's effects till the end of the turn. And you can only use you can only use one of those 2 per turn, or once per turn. So if you use the search, you can't use the grave effect, and if you use the grave effect, you can't use the search that turn. And then next, I play 3 copies of Fallen of Elbaz. Fallen of Elbaz has the effect that when it's summoned, you can discard 1 card if you use it with one of your opponent's monsters, which I believe it technically reads as you can fuse it with one other monster on the field, but it cannot be your own. And then next is Bestials, where I play 1 copy of 3 of the Bestials. Each of the Bestials that are level 6 share the effect of when you can target a light or dark monster in either player's graveyard, banish that target, and if you do, special summon this card from your hand. And that effect becomes a quick effect when your opponent controls a monster. You can only activate each of their effects once per turn, and they each have their own unique effect beyond that. Druid's Worm makes it so that when it leaves the field, then you can target a special summon monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. Magnamut activates on summon, so that during the end phase of the turn you can add a dragon from your deck to your hand. And then Baldrake has the effect that when your opponent would... Let's see, how's it worded specifically, because I can't ever remember this one. Let's see... If your opponent special summons a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster, except in damage step, you Contribute one other light or dark monster, then target one of those special summon monsters and banish it. And then next, I play 3 copies of Bestial Serenir. Serenir has the effect that when it's sent to the graveyard, then you can send one Bestial or branded spell or trap from the deck to the graveyard. And then next, I play 1 copy of Ad Libitum of Despia. Ad Libitum has the effect that when it's banished or sent to the graveyard by a card effect, or when it's sent to the graveyard or banished as fusion material, then you can activate Ad Libitum's effect, target a Despia other than another copy of itself, or a level 8 or higher fusion monster that is in your graveyard or banished, and special summon it. And then Ad Libitum does have another effect, but it never gets in play, so there's no point in going over that effect. Next, I play 3 copies of the Bestial Lubellion. The Bestial Lubellion has the effect that once per turn you can discard it to then add any Bestial from your deck to your hand, except for another copy of Lubellion. And then you can special summon Lubellion from your hand or graveyard by triggering a level 6 or higher Dark Dragon. And then Lubellion's final effect is once per turn you can take a branded continuous spell or trap from your deck and place it face up in your spell and trap zone. And lastly, for the monsters, I play 1 copy of Dramaturge of Despia. Dramaturge is just a free body when you use it as fusion material. And then when your opponent summons a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link, it might not even be Ritual. Yeah, when your opponent summons a Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster, or Link, then you can activate Dramaturge's effect, target one monster on the field, and negates effects till the end of the turn. Now for one-of spells, I play 1 copy of that Grasshole Screener. This just helps you fill your graveyard for being able to just be able to use your graveyard as a resource in order to just keep going further. And with, let's see, what was it? Abyss Dweller recently getting banned, and Shifter being hit to 1, this actually isn't that bad of a strategy anymore. Then I play 1 copy of Branded Regained. I never went over this. But that Grasshole Screener just lets you take, if you have more cards in your deck than your opponent, you take the surplus and send it from the top of your deck to the graveyard. So if this is in your opening hand, you have 5 cards in your hand, you're giving you 55, your opponent has 5 in their hand, and they're playing a 40 card deck, so they have 35. That Grasshole Screener will then let you send the top 20 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And then Branded Regained has 2 effects. One is a once per copy, the other is a hard once per turn. The once per copy effect is when your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you can special summon a bestial monster from your hand or graveyard. I will go ahead and say it now, the only bestial monsters you'd be able to summon with this are the level 6 bestials, and then Dispater, should Dispater ever go to the graveyard. Just make sure. Okay. And then its other effect is what makes it so that hard once per turn, when a light or dark monster is banished, you can target that monster, put it at the bottom of the owner's deck, and if you do, draw 1 card. And then next, I play 1 copy of Branded Lost. Branded Lost has the effect that your opponent cannot negate a card or effect that includes the effect of Fusion Summon. And then your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a fusion monster is summoned. And then its final effect is if you fusion summon a monster, then you can add a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand. One thing I like doing with this is activate this, then activate Branded Fusion, because in theory your opponent can't ash that since that negates the effect of a card that fusion summon. But I know somehow it does work. I don't understand how. But in theory, it's not supposed to be able to be stopped. And then one thing I like doing with this as a result of that is summon something that has a fusion monster with an effect on summon. Because then you can make a chain link, have this be like 1 to search, 2 would be tragedy to search, and then 3 be the fusion monster. Because the fusion monsters last, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response, so all 3 will go through. And then I also play 1 copy of Despia, Theater of the Branded. Theater of the Branded is a once per turn polymerization. And then if your non-fusion fairy monster leaves the field, whether it's by an opponent's attacking monster or an opponent's card effect, then you can special target a level 8 or lower fusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it. And you can only use each effect of Despia, Theater of the Branded once per turn. Then I play 1 copy of Triple Tactics Talent. This card can only be activated if your opponent's activated a monster effect during the main phase. But it lets you activate 1 of 3 effects, where you can look at your opponent's hand, shuffle a card back into the deck, take control of an opponent's monster until the end of the turn, or draw 2 cards. You can only activate 1 thrust or talent per turn. And I play 1 copy of Foolish Burial. This just lets you send a monster from your deck to the graveyard. 1 Gold Sarcophagus. This just lets you banish a monster from your deck. This will normally be used to banish Tragedy from the deck so you can add an Aliber. 1 copy of Chaos Space. Chaos Space is just in here so you can discard a dark monster to be able to add the Bestial Lubellion from deck to hand. And then if you have a monster that cannot be normal summon or set, in this case any fusion monsters or the Bestial Lubellion, then you can banish the card from your graveyard, target that monster that cannot be normal summon or set, shuffle into the deck, and if you do, draw 1 card. And then lastly, for the 1 of cards, I play 1 copy of Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion lets you fusion summon a fusion monster that requires Fallen of Albaz by using 2 materials from your deck. You are locked into fusion monsters for the rest of the turn after this card resolves. I feel like there's another thing I'm forgetting. You can only activate 1 Branded Fusion per turn. I think that's what it was, because I think what one of my friends tried to do was activate Branded Fusion, then use Tragedy to reset Fusion, then do it again. But that does not work because you can only activate 1 Fusion per turn. Anyway, next I play 2 copies of Branded in Red. One last thing I'll mention about Branded Fusion. This card is actually amazing Ash bait, as your opponent has an Ash Blossom, and you activate this, 9 times out of 10 they'll use the Ash on this. But Branded in Red lets you target a Despia or Fallen of Albaz that's in your graveyard, return it to your hand, and then you have the option of being able to banish from your hand or field to fusion summon. And then next, I play 2 copies of Dragon Shrine. Dragon Shrine lets you send a dragon from your deck to the graveyard. Ordinarily, I'll use this to send either Fallen of Albaz, the Bestial Lubellion, or Bestial Sereneer from deck to grave. Usually the Bestials will go first, but... And then Dragon Shrine also has the effect that if you send a normal monster first, then you can send a second dragon, but this deck doesn't use any normal monsters, so that effect doesn't really matter. And then technically I had 3 extra spots in this deck, which I chose to play 3 copies of Pot of Avarice. Pot of Avarice lets you target 5 monsters in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and then you get to draw 2 cards. My thought process of playing Pot of Avarice was you can use it with Alba System for when you use its effect to be able to put 5 of your 5 of your fusion monsters in the graveyard back in the deck and then draw 2 cards. And then next, I play 3 copies of Allure of Darkness. Allure of Darkness lets you draw 2 cards and then banish the dark monster from your hand, otherwise you send your entire hand to the graveyard. The best monster to draw off of Allure of Darkness in this deck is the copy of Despian Tragedy. Then I play 3 copies of Thrust. Thrust has the effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect, or activates a card effect, when your opponent activates a monster effect during your turn, then you can set a normal spell or normal trap from your deck, but can't activate that turn. But if your opponent controls a monster when you activate this card, then you can add it to your hand instead. And then next, I play 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. Fusion Deployment lets you reveal a fusion monster from your extra deck to then summon a monster from your deck that has the same name as the card that's mentioned on that fusion monster. However, I'm probably going to end up taking Fusion Deployment out of the deck for 3 copies of Perulia, and I'll probably end up replacing Pot of Avarice with Fualos. Just there's a little bit more draw power. And then next, I play 3 copies of Branded Opening. Branded Opening has the effect that you can discard a card, not for cost, to then be able to special summon a Despia monster from your deck in defense position. And then it has another effect where if your fusion monster be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. And you can only use each effect of Branded Opening once per turn. Moving on to the traps, I play 1 copy of Branded Beast. Branded Beast has the effect that you can only use its first effect if you control a bestial monster, but it lets you tribute a dragon monster you control to the target 1 card your opponent controls, and then destroy that target. And then during the end phase, it lets you target a branded continuous spell or trap that's in your graveyard and place it face up in your spell and trap zone. Next, I play 3 copies of probably my favorite trap card in the game at the moment, which is 3 copies of Dragon's Mind. Most of the Albaz fusion monsters have an attack or defense of 2,500. So I figured I'd go ahead and play a Solemn Judgment that can only activate a monster with 2,500 or more, 2,500 attack or defense. And then Dragon's Mind also has the great effect of allowing you to pay 2,500 life points to set it back from the graveyard. However, its banishment leaves the field. And then lastly, I play 3 copies of Branded Banishment. Branded Banishment has the effect that once per turn you can target a Despia. Where's the Fallen of Eldas? You target a Despia or level 8 or higher fusion monster from your graveyard, special summon it, and then you can banish from either side of the field to fusion summon. And you can only activate 1 Branded Banishment per turn. Let's see, that is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, I play 2 copies of Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. I was playing 3, but I kind of wanted another Albaz name, which I know exactly which one I'll take out if I decide to put the 3rd one back in, but for now I'm only playing 2. But Masquerade the Blazing Dragon has the effect that whilst fusion summon cards on the field, your opponent has to pay 600 life points to activate cards and effects. And then, if this card's in your graveyard and your opponent controls a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or linked monster, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use that effect to Masquerade the Blazing Dragon once per turn. One thing I really like about this card is that its effect requires your opponent to pay life points actually stacks. So if you have 2 of them in play, they have to pay 1,200 per card. Next, I play 3 copies of Albion the Branded Dragon. Albion the Branded Dragon has the effect that during the end phase, this card's in the graveyard because it was sent there that turn. You can add to your hand or set a branded spell or trap card. And then its effect on summon lets you banish from your field or graveyard in order to fusion summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster. Or is it level 8 or higher? Can I remember it's higher or lower? Okay, this one's level 8 or lower. And then next, I play 1 copy of Sprind the Iron Dash Dragon. This is the card I had to take out for the 3rd Masquerade. I'm just trying to figure out if I need the names or not. Honestly, this doesn't do anything. It's just in here as an Albaz fusion monster. And the same can technically go for Brigand, although Brigand can technically use its effect. Which is during the end phase of turn it's sent to the graveyard, you can special summon a Fallen of Albaz or a Tri-Brigade monster from your deck. So this can technically summon out Mercarier. Then I also play 1 copy of Renbrum the Striking Dragon. Renbrum has the effect that, let's see, I believe its triggering is when it's summoned. Oh. When a Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster effect is activated, you can negate that effect, then you can return 1 monster on the field to the hand. During your opponent's turn, while cards in your graveyard as a quick effect, you can target one Fallen Valabaz in your graveyard. Special summon either the target or itself, and then banish the other one. So you can summon this and then banish a Fallen Valabaz, or you can summon a Fallen Valabaz and banish this. And you only use each effect of Rim Brum once per turn. Then next, I play one copy of Despian Queritus, one Alba Leonatus, the Abyss Dragon, and one copy of Titaniclad, the Ash Dragon. Despian Queritus has the effect that during the main phase, quick effect, you can activate its effect, you reduce the attack of all monsters on the field to 0, except for level 8 or higher fusion monsters. And then if Queritus is destroyed by an opponent's card, then you can special summon a Despia monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Queritus once per turn. And then Alba Leonatus, the Abyss Dragon, is unlike the rest of the fusion monsters in this deck, is actually a contact fusion monster. As you either fusion summon it by using Fallen Valabaz and then any number of dragons by card effect, or you can send them from either side of the field to the graveyard. So, I actually really like playing against Blue Eyes with this deck because I can act like I can't do anything. I'll set a Fallen Valabaz, and I just contact fuse all their dragons away to summon this. Anyway, Alba Leonatus gets to attack monsters your opponent controls, up to the number of materials used for its fusion summoning. And then during the end phase of the turn, it's sent to the graveyard. You can add to your hand or set a normal fusion or polymerization spell card. And then Titaniclad has the effect that during the end phase, you can special summon a Despia, a Dogmatica or Fallen Valabaz from your deck. And then next, I play one copy of Lubellion the Searing Dragon. Lubellion the Searing Dragon has the effect that when it's summoned, you can discard a card to fusion summon by shuffling monsters from your hand or from your field, grave, and banish back into the deck. Lubellion cannot attack turn you use that effect. And then when you use that effect, you're locked into fusion or something like that. It doesn't really matter because everything in the extra deck is a fusion monster. And then next, I play one copy of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon. Mirror Jade has the effect you can only control one. Once per turn, you can activate its effect, send a Alabaz fusion monster from your deck to the graveyard. To non-target, banish a monster on the field. If you use that effect, then you can't use it until the end. You can only use it every other turn. Is what I'm trying to think. I can't remember its wording off the top of my head. But then Mirror Jade's final effect is if it leaves the field by an opponent's card, except by being returned to the extra deck, because that somehow can't trigger. Then you can activate out Mirror Jade's effect, so that during the end phase you destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Then I play one copy of Alba System Dogmatic Calamity. This requires Fallen Valabaz plus 6 monsters in your graveyard with different names, which you either summon this off of Albion, the branded dragon, this thing, or Lubellion. And then it has the effect where it cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. I believe it has that protection effect. I remember it's some kind of protection. Okay, it doesn't have any protection at all. My bad. But it does have the effect that it can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. When it declares an attack, you have to send a Alabaz fusion monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then its final effect is once per turn, if you control its fusion summon card, and you have 6 or more different Fallen Valabaz fusion monsters in grave, then you can send all cards in both players' extra decks to the graveyard. Which that's why I play a Pot of Avarice in the deck, because then I can take 5 of the fusion monsters sent off of the Alba system, put them back in my deck, and just draw 2 cards. And then lastly, I play one copy of Guardian Chimera. Guardian Chimera has the effect that when it's fusion summoned, you destroy cards on your opponent's field equal to the number of monsters from field used to summon it, and you draw cards for each monster in your hand used to summon it. With that summoning condition being 3 monsters with different names, with at least 1 being on field and at least 1 being in hand. It does have another effect, but I don't play polymerization in this deck, so its ability to make itself untargetable doesn't really matter. But that is it for my branded Bestial deck profile. If you have any ideas what I could use to improve the deck, ideas for decks I like to see made in the future, or decks I like to see face each other, feel free to comment down below. Thank you for watching.